Hi, my name is Michelle and I'm here from Theatre for Life CIC. We're here today working with the University of Southampton and Life Lab and the New Forest National Park Authority to start our climate change project. This is a really exciting youth-led project using science and theatre and conservation and being outdoors to explore how the climate change is affecting our local communities. Today we're going to be exploring the science behind climate change. We're going to be participating in a greenhouse experience and an escape room activity as well. Climate change is so vast and it affects people in so many different ways, but we really want to look at how it could affect our young people in the future, but most importantly, what we can do to mitigate those risks by taking action now.
And what we've done with this...
Hi, my name is Kath Woods Townsend and I'm the Programme Manager for Life Lab here at the University of Southampton. What's really exciting about this project for me is bringing science together with arts and creativity in order to engage young people with climate change. One of the things I'm really excited about is that we've designed an escape room which kind of really looks at the science behind climate change, but in a fun and interactive way.
You need to listen to us, we who cannot vote. We are in the midst of the blank mass extinction, and the extinction rate is up to blank times faster.
Does it only have 2 wings?
Yes. No, it says, one pair of wings, so... Yeah, but it's 2 wings.
Yeah, we need
One.
sixth mass extinction, and the extinction rate is up to...
There's 90%. Wait, have we actually read this?
I can't live that down. Hi, I'm Rudy Fennell. I'm 16 from Southampton. I hope to learn a lot of different things. I'm very interested in how to seemingly completely opposite industries intertwine with each other. That's what I'm most fascinated about with this project.
Well, I loved it in the morning when we did the escape room, and then we had a call with someone from COP26, which was actually really informational. And then after that, we did a lot of drama games, and that was really fun.
I particularly like learning about the plants in the greenhouse because it's just so fascinating to see what they're doing.
I'm Mark Chapman. I work at the University in Biological Sciences. I'm going to demonstrate some plants and talk about climate change with the young people that we're going to meet today. One of the things I look at is crop species, and we're interested in how they adapt to different environments, whether they're drought tolerant, and if we can generate drought tolerant ones by doing clever breeding. To do this breeding, we quite often take a crop and we cross it with a wild relative, so a closely related species, but maybe it's drought tolerant or heat tolerant. So if you make hybrids and you keep doing the crossing, you can make a crop, but it's got some of the genes from the wild species in it that make it drought tolerant. So when you go around Sainsbury's or Tesco's, you'll see tomatoes and aubergines and everything else like that, but they all had to come from the wild at some point. And the wild species look surprisingly different to the domesticated species. So I'm hoping that I can talk to young people about their perception of climate change and how maybe their diet or their nutrition can be influenced by the plants that they eat, and how that has an impact on the world as a whole. See all these little yellow fruits?
Yeah.
So this is another one of the wild species. It's not as closely related, but that species is very drought tolerant. So the fruit aren't very tasty, they're a bit bitter, but they're very drought tolerant. So if we can be careful and clever, we can cross and do hybridization, and we can try and make the drought tolerant genes from this species actually move them into a tomato, so that we have a tasty red tomato, but it has the drought tolerance genes of this species that's shown with the yellow fruits.
My name is Jim Mitchell and I work for the New Forest National Park Authority. Well, today was all about showing them this fantastic tree house here in Bewley, using it as a place of inspiration, but really just helping to collectively understand some of the challenges that we might face around climate change, but the role different habitats can play as well. So Lewis from the CET, he took us around the woodland here, and we talked about coppicing, and we looked at the different types of trees and how they might be fixing carbon. But then we also talked about the other sorts of habitats in the New Forest, like the heathland and the marshland and the coast as well. So hopefully just giving everybody a bit of a picture really to build on for future weeks.
Well, so far I've just met the group and we've had a walk around the woodland, and I've pointed out a few things. I've spoken to them about some of the ways we manage the woodland here, and I've had a chance to have a few chats with them about their thoughts on climate, which is their focus for today.
I liked most about today was learning about like different types of trees and how they could help with carbon dioxide, and like how it's bad when you cut them down and stuff, and that it releases the carbon dioxide back into the atmosphere.
Well, we did a little skit, a little play called Climate Champions, which our education team have developed, and I just loved the way that the young people just took that straight away. They were, no preparation, they just went straight in there and just threw themselves into it and seemed to really enjoy it, and I really enjoyed seeing that, because it just shows really the energy and the ideas that they've got, and they're just willing to get stuck straight in.
We had a discussion with one of the tour guides, Lewis. We talked about climate change as from the perspective of a social and political issue rather than that of a scientific-based one.
What's really struck me about this group is how willing they are to share and think about bigger picture stuff. So they were really quizzing Lewis around some quite complex ideas around society, around economies and climate change. So I think it looks really good for the coming weeks and the production that these young people are thinking so creatively and so deeply about what is such an important topic.
I wanted a perspective of what was going on around me so I could know. I didn't want to be in the dark of what was happening in the world, especially since it's a pretty big thing right now. Theatre is a really good medium to get stories across. You have characters, you have scenes, you have music. Everything that's part of the theatre goes into the process of the audience understanding the message that they're putting across. So I think that would be a really good way to teach the audience about climate change in a way that they'll remember it and it will stick with them and it will affect them.
Well, I think if we could come away with at least some of these guys having a bit more of a connection with the New Forest, that would be a big goal achievement for me. I think it's great to get people out and about, and it's difficult to expect young people to have a stake in the New Forest, for example, or any natural environment for that matter, if they're not actually invested in it and interested in it. So if any of these guys come away with a bit more of a love for the forest, that'd be a big win for me.
I think I want to walk out of this with the motivation to learn new things. Because it's my first time doing anything like this specifically, I want to walk out with the motivation that I do want to do this in the future. This is something that I enjoy learning about, and it's something that I enjoy teaching others about.
Okay, so my name's Helen Robinson, and I'm the lead education and youth officer for the New Forest National Park Authority. And what I do is I have the privilege of meeting lots of groups of young people, whether they're with a youth group or a school, and introducing them to the forest and helping them to get to know it a bit better, to help them connect with it. Many of them have never been to the forest before, and many of them haven't left town before sometimes. They're hopped on a coach, or in this case a train, which is fantastic. And we show them some of the special qualities of the forest, like the tranquility. Well, they get hopefully a chance to see the ponies, but they're never guaranteed. And understand how that landscape works, why it's special, and also a little bit about how we can behave in it to make sure we're protecting it for next time that they come back and visit, perhaps when they're older or with their family. And just inspire, hopefully, the next generation who will care about this place that's been here for hundreds of years. But we're upstream of the village right now, and this patch of green can absorb a lot of water. And even further upstream, we've got something called a valley mire, which is full of an amazing plant called sphagnum moss. I mean, it's really boggy, you can't walk over it. And that can absorb 20 times its own weight in water. So the more of that habitat we have, the better. But as you say, habitats move, the stream moves. The amount of boggy ground versus the kind of grass that you could actually sit and have a picnic on will change over time based on how hot that summer was, how wet that winter was, based on, did it flood, based on was there a blockage in the stream and did it back up for 2 years and then it ended up going in a different channel. And the ponies are changing where the stream is as well. They get in and out the water to have a drink, and they're eroding the banks. You can literally see their hoof prints, which from one side of the thing, people might see as a bad thing because the river is less defined and more likely to flood. But on the other hand, those ponies getting in and out are creating bare soil where new plants can establish, and that's where we get our biodiversity from having the ponies turn up a little bit, not too much, of the habitats. There's a debate about how many ponies are on the forest and should there be that many. So the most important thing to remember is that habitats need the space to move. If the river migrated that way and that way and that way, and it got to the road, at that point it can't go past the road, and then it becomes a solid feature and it can't move. But if we can give the habitat space to move, the river to go side to side, to flood and then to fill down again, then there's space for those animals and species within it to adapt. So that's what we are really looking for, and that's what we're talking about when we talk about the resilience of our habitats, or we're talking about nature recovery. I have the privilege of meeting some groups and showing them our open heathland and our valley mires and introducing them to some of the rare flowers. And I go back to the same spots each year, and I'm telling people where to tread carefully, to follow certain tracks. But those plants are moving every year. I go back to the same spots and I have to go, oh, there's no sphagnum moss here this year. It's gone over there. It's a very dry year last year. So I know that these environments are very, very changeable. And I think that's part of the fascination of it as well.
Have you guys learned lots that we can, use within the piece? Is there little nuggets of information?
Yeah, thank you. Lovely.
Yeah, it was lovely, wasn't it? I think if you could just go away, I'm sorry to be all teachery, but maybe just sort of go right away stuff that you think, actually that's a really interesting point. Like we were just talking about the flooding, weren't we? We were quite interested in maybe potentially exploring that a little bit more. That would be super helpful, just to kind of journal anything that you think, actually I'm really interested in that. So
what time is it? So my name's Gareth, and I work for a charity called Pedal, and we run inclusive cycling rides in the New Forests, which enables people who wouldn't normally able to get out and enjoy the amazing countryside on 2 or 3 wheels.
Lots of people do not have the confidence to go out, so this enables them to do it.
I think we show people there's lots more different types of bikes rather than just the ordinary 2-wheeler bike, so everybody can be out cycling. You don't have to be someone who can just ride an ordinary 2-wheeler bike.
Most of our riders tend to have some sort of physical or learning disability, or maybe lack of confidence, maybe haven't been out for riding for a long time and want a bit of help just getting back out there again, enjoying the New Forest. Pedalling is one of the best forms of exercise you can do. It's a good way of transport, getting away from relying on motorised vehicles to get you around from A to B. I think the more people see how beneficial it is, especially from a young age, then as I said, more likely they are to carry it on as they get older. And the hardest bit at the moment is getting people to change their ways. So if people start young, it's the best way to get that kind of education into people, isn't it?
Different sorts of pine, and then some of the trees along here, oak, and then smaller trees, hawthorn in there. We've got a birch tree over there, so quite a lot of different species just in this little area here.
I used to cycle this when my 23-year-old son was a baby with him on the back, and there were beautiful trees, and then one day they were all cut down and I wanted to cry. But look, they're all back now because they're replanted. That's how quickly they grow.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So, yeah.
Favourite building block?
Yeah. Obviously the biodiversity and everything they need to do. Yeah.
Predominantly the New Forest is grazed by ponies, but there are more and more cattle as well. So it's, the numbers vary, but it's between 4,500, 5,000 ponies, 5,000 cattle at the moment, and then donkeys, a few hundred, and then in the autumn pigs as well, which get let out to graze as well. And that's really amazing when you're walking through the woods and you suddenly find like 20 pigs just snuffling through the woodlands.
So we're really fortunate on this project to be working with LifeLab, the University of Southampton, and today we're working with a marine biologist called Holly Jenkins, which is really, really interesting.
Hi, I'm Holly Jenkins. So I work for Students Organising for Sustainability in the UK, which is a charity working on sustainability and education. I work with young people across the UK and we try and get them to reconnect with nature, because it's really important for mental well-being, for our futures, and just to have that feeling that everyone can do something rather than being powerless. So today we're focusing on the ocean, and it's really nice to just look at it in a bit of a different light, especially people living by the ocean. Sometimes you're used to seeing it as an everyday thing, but actually really focusing on it is great, and just to reconnect with it a little bit, learn a bit about it. And with the ocean is affected by everything in climate change as well, so it brings it in the subject really nicely.
So today we went down to Eston Shore and we learnt about how carbon dioxide in the atmosphere can diffuse into the ocean water, and I found the experiment that we did quite interesting, because we got seawater and we put it at the bottom of a glass jar, and on top of that we made a chemical reaction that makes carbon dioxide, and we saw how it diffused into the water beneath it. I think it helped me understand how much of an impact global warming can have on not just the air and the plants on surface, but also underwater, because it can affect so many different things. We learn how when carbon dioxide does diffuse into the water, how it can affect the plants down there, how it can affect the shells and how they grow, and how it can also benefit some things, but overall it can disturb the ecosystem.
I think just meeting Holly today is really, really interesting, and actually understanding her work within this field. We've looked at her expedition to the Arctic and understood that role as well, and I think that's really fascinating. And then secondly, I think the most important thing we've learned today is to protect our coastlines, to be really mindful when we're visiting these nature spots, particularly in our local community. So I think taking that on board is going to be really, really positive going forwards.
The oceans make up approximately 71% of our planet. Just for me to think that practically all of that 71% of our planet is completely is very heavily polluted. Just blows my mind. Yeah, that's what I'll be taking into next week, because I think that's something that you can really just make a huge impact on with an audience.
We're going to have to refresh the vinegar to make it actually work, but no, it's even better than it. I think maybe they were quite eroded by the sea already, so maybe that's weakened them. Right, this is quite a big diagram, but I thought it's better to have it on a thing you can look at as well. If you can't see it, it's fine. But this is just a bit of background information about how we're affecting the oceans. We mostly covered it last week. So obviously, plastic pollution, that's a really big one. You must be able to see it. So that causes animals to die. Pretty simple. But it's actually not the biggest threat. The biggest threat is probably the more greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. So that is they warm the planet, so that causes the warming, but also they cause that ocean acidification, which means that any animals with shells, shellfish, that kind of thing, but also animals with skeletons, so coral reefs, they really struggle with those carbon shell skeletons. And then that means that the food web is disrupted, because all of those animals can't survive anymore. And then we can't rely on the ocean and the ocean for food anymore. So that ocean acidification maybe sounds quite abstract, oh, what is that? It doesn't really matter, but actually affects everything and how we interact with the ocean. Who uses plastic bags one time instead of reusing them? Nice. Great, yeah. As long as you're reusing them, it's fine. They've banned, cotton buds that you're not supposed to get using anywhere, that everyone's using there. They're now paper instead of plastic, so that's just a little swap. And then public, there's loads of people going out on beach cleans, so that's really helped as well. And I think awareness, you all know you wouldn't throw your rubbish in the bin, you wouldn't just throw it, right? Everyone thinks, I think, a bit more that we'll put it in the bin. However, face masks. This obviously was done before the majority of COVID, and there's a lot of masks everywhere, so I'm guessing when we go down we'll probably find some face masks.
In the blue surgical face masks, when submerged in water, there have been traces of cadmium and lead in them, which are deadly elements. if you can, people should switch to reusable face masks as they are better for the environment.
The biggest ways an individual can help reduce their climate impact is by making your voice heard, so writing emails, letters to people in power, and changing your diet, so cutting down on meat, dairy, going vegan, vegetarian, or even just cutting out things like fish. You can reduce your carbon footprint by about 60% by going vegan, so that's a really good way to reduce your impact on the climate.
So, have we got any ideas?
Beach cleans.
Beach cleans, yeah. Yeah, so they're really good for plastic, yeah.
Yeah.
So I think maybe beach cleans would possibly be under the changing something for yourself.
Yeah.
Patrick.
Then it makes you feel better about yourself if you help the environment.
So since November, we've been out and about in the community exploring different environments and how climate change is affecting the New Forest, the city of Southampton and our local coastlines. It's been really interesting and insightful to learn about climate change specifically to those landscapes. So in the forest, we learned about deforestation, we learned about sustainable travel and cycling, which was amazing for our health. And we learnt most importantly about how to protect the villages against flooding and traffic pollution. We then went to Western Shore, our local coastline in Southampton, and looked at acidification. We also looked at plastic pollution and overfishing, and we also looked at coastal erosion. And right at that time, Storm Eunice decided to make an appearance. It couldn't be more timely to look at the actual impact of storms, rising sea levels and flooding within our local area. So it was a really interesting, kind of perverse juxtaposition of how nature was impacting our local communities. Lastly, we've been working with Southampton National Park City Project, learning about our local green spaces and how we can nurture just simply, in our own houses, how concrete areas become, nature friendly and how we can introduce that into our own sort of domestic environments. So that's been a really, really interesting, taste into the city. Also, we've worked on the Southampton City Farm as well, learning about biodiversity within the city, creating these green oases, amongst kind of concrete areas and how that can be both beneficial for nature but also for our mental health. I think one of the biggest things that I've discovered through this project is the value of green and blue prescribing, how nature and open spaces can be really transformative in terms of improving your health and well-being. Just simply being out in the forest with this amazing group of young people has been not only good for my well-being, but theirs, in return. Just being in the fresh air and valuing what we have and what nature is intended, and how, we need to kind of value and respect that a little bit more as we move forward.
Today I'm going to take what I learned and I'm going to think about what an impact climate change could have when it comes down to picking a sustainable option over a non-sustainable option, or what form of transport to take, anything that could affect climate change.
Going vegan, vegetarian, or even just cutting out things like fish, you can reduce your carbon footprint by about 60% by going vegan. So that's a really good way to reduce your impact on the climate.
I hope to achieve more of a broader sense of awareness and create a broader sense of awareness for climate change. And also I've got a few projects in my head right now. Ideas for a few projects, yeah.
My goal is to use more sustainable forms of travel, such as it be cycling, walking, running, anything that helps the environment, and to teach others about it so that it can make a knock-on effect.